Hello, everybody, and welcome to our first V DAO community call. We are incredibly excited to have you all join us today as we dive into the who, what, and why. We are recording today's community call so that we can post it up in the server, giving those that were unable to attend today's call the opportunity to be kept in the loop and watch at their own leisure. We'll be monitoring the chat section on the Zoom to keep an eye out for any questions as we move along. If you have any questions, we highly recommend that you submit them via the chat and or write them down and save them for the end when we will also be opening things up for people to ask questions. Today we will be discussing why V DAO, some of the V DAO goals and initiatives, as well as next steps and how everyone can participate and contribute. My name is Ben Burkholm. I am the community manager here at Fifth World V DAO. I have been in the Web3 space since 2020 with a very strong focus in the areas of community building and regenerative living, refi as well. Some of you may know me from the refi space. I am joined by Mark, co-CEO of Fifth World, and Chris, the crypto lead at Fifth World. Mark, if you could give yourself an introduction, and then Chris, you could follow up.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Ben. My name is Mark. Been in blockchain since 2014, I think. So almost 10 years. Prior to that, was in clean tech and smart cities and smart grids, and also some fintech work. And yeah, currently leading Fifth World and also focused on this V DAO initiative that we're going to be discussing today. So great to see you all.
Hey guys, my name's Chris. I'm originally from Scotland, currently living in Germany. My original background is in social work, and I lived in this city for many years. But around 2016-17, moved out into the countryside, got really interested in food forests, and then went down the permaculture rabbit hole in a big way. And then around about the start of the pandemic in 2020, I discovered crypto and got really interested in the potential of Web3 technology as a coordination tool. And yeah, really happy to be here and happy to meet you all.
Awesome. All right. We're not going to spend too much time on this one. I'm assuming that most of you have read the manifesto, and if you haven't, we can always check it out and discuss it. But we just wanted to kind of reiterate a little bit the raison d'etre of V DAO and why we thought starting a DAO was a good idea before we dive into the more concrete goals and initiatives that we think we should be focused on, but we also want to hear you guys' thoughts and we want to shape it together. So this deck is really kind of our hypothesis, but we do want to, hear everyone out and get feedback and also hear new ideas out and, incorporate them into thinking. It's interesting that, Chris, you said you started in permaculture and then you ended up in crypto. So that was interesting because I'm actually the other way around. I started in crypto and then I learned about permaculture, joined Consensus early on and got into crypto economics and system thinking. And then at some point, I got introduced to this concept of regenerative agriculture. And from there, it kind of clicked to me, like these guys, the movie that I watched really was The Biggest Little Farm, which is basically the standard movie that everyone typically watches to get into that space. And the similarities for me were very strong in terms of system thinking. One was being used in real life in terms of building an ecosystem. And on the crypto side, with crypto economics, we try to think about how to build digital systems that are decentralized and anti-fragile and regenerative. So there was a strong connection there, and it took some time to kind of build on this connection and get to the thinking that we're trying to discuss at V DAO. And so at the center of V DAO, or basically V DAO exists at the intersection of those three main concepts. One is regenerative living, and we're going to talk a little bit about that and what we mean by regenerative living. But basically, it's this concept that we need to start thinking about moving out of just sustainable into regenerative, right? So sustainable focuses on preserving what we have, But the reality is we also need to restore and regenerate what we have in terms of our ecosystems, our systems in general, and just, in terms of our lives also. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that. But the idea here is that how can we build solutions that can regenerate the resources that are being consumed rather than just extract them and consume them, or even just maintain them, which is what sustainability is mostly about. The second, pillar is this concept of anti-fragility and resilience. And I think most people probably agree that most of the systems we rely on today are not just centralized, but also fragile. And a crisis like, for example, the COVID pandemic really can put them to the test and in some cases break them down. And so how do we move from where we are today to building resiliency and anti-fragility into our systems so they can sustain volatility, but also thrive on volatility in some cases? And then the third one is this self-custody concept. And I think in crypto, we talk a lot about self-custody of digital assets and data. And then I realized in permaculture, it's also, a very similar ethos in the sense that it's about self-custody of food, energy, water, shelter, and just generally physical infrastructure. And so that's kind of what we're trying to do with V DAO, and this is kind of the mission. And we believe that if we build on these three pillars, we can move from a paradigm that is prioritizing primarily financial growth today and generating negative externalities in terms of like negative impact, environmentally or from a societal perspective, to a paradigm where we're prioritizing both growth and resiliency and anti-fragility and basically individual and community level ownership. And so on the right hand side, it's we try to highlight this more as we talk about V DAO. We focus on bottom-up solutions that can empower individuals and community, and then Web3 is kind of the global coordination layer that can help us get those communities to coordinate, collaborate, share the knowledge, and even ultimately innovate. You might have seen also at the top of the slide the DACC expression, which basically means decentralized acceleration or differential acceleration, which in other words is basically this concept of anti-fragile growth and resiliency in the way we grow and the way we evolve. So to move on to the next slide and talk a little bit about regenerative living, we define it based on three main pillars. So the first one is high tech, then high touch, and high nature. And fundamentally, it's this concept that we are all part of the same system, and we have a responsibility to make sure that the system is healthy and is generating positive externalities rather than negative ones. And we believe that we have a lot of tools and solutions and framework at our disposal today to actually usher in this direction and kind of move from negative behavior to positive behavior. So when we say high tech, creating feedback loops, using smart home technology to adapt in terms of like energy consumption and water consumption and so on and so on. So that's kind of the high-tech piece, which we believe is essential, and we believe technology is a key feature of our civilization, and we need to keep investing in that direction. The high-touch piece recognizes that we also, in general, as humans, are also social animals, right? And a big part of our identity is defined by our interaction with our friends, with our families, with our communities. And so how can we build meaningful, authentic relationships with our community members, with, within the DAO, and in general, within our societies? And really here kind of moving away from this attention-based economy that Web2 has been focused on, which prioritizes, the short-term, quick interactions to more authentic and meaningful sorts of interaction. And then the high nature piece is really where the regen ag and permaculture, thing comes into play. And primarily, the point there is that we need to partner with nature and work with nature. And if we're able to do that, leveraging technology also, we'll be able to unleash nature's abundance in terms of food, energy, water, and basically in general, physical infrastructure. And this is a little bit different from the way, our systems work today, which primarily focus on controlling nature, or in a lot of cases working against nature intentionally or unintentionally. And so regen ag is at the core of this, permaculture is at the core of this, and we want to figure out how do we expand those, frameworks outside of agriculture to pretty much like all sorts of verticals that we rely on today. So to move to the next slide, I wanted to end with some high-level themes that the DAO will be focused on in terms of the type of work we'll be doing and the different discussions and lunch and learns and conversations we'll be having. And based on our own assessment, we identified 3 main categories here in line with the DAO's basically mission and vision. And so the first one is regenerative land design. And under this topic, we'll be covering regen ag, permaculture. There's a big part of raising awareness and educating the community within V DAO, but also outside of V DAO around these concepts, passive solar greenhouses, and basically the concept of the climate battery, and how we can actually build synergetic and circular systems between technology, primarily data computing and storage structures, and systems that need heat, like basically your house or your greenhouse. And there are so many examples of that actually around the world, and we want to figure out how do we educate but also scale this. Rainwater harvesting to secure own water, agrivoltaics, and the list goes on here. We're just sharing some examples in terms of what goes under that. And the main idea here is that how do we move from the current way we manage land to a more regenerative, anti-fragile way of managing land? The second big category is decentralized AI and linking that to regenerating Earth, right? So we spoke a little bit earlier about how can we create feedback loops. And I'm sure, a good portion of people present on this call probably have a Garmin or a Whoop or a Fitbit or maybe an Apple Watch. And I'm sure it's pretty interesting, when you start tracking your body metrics, you start actually responding to it and trying to, basically optimize how your body is operating in different ways. In some cases, you might even obsess over it in a good way. And so similarly here, we think we need to start figuring out how to source the right data and how to measure ecosystem health and state changes in ecosystem health in a way that allows us to create a Whoop for planet Earth, but ultimately allow us to use AI solutions to optimize how we're regenerating ecosystems and regenerating land, and not even at the level of big ecosystems and big lands, even at the level of our own houses and our own communities and our own practices that we're basically embracing on a daily basis. So I have this idea here of a regenerative living GPT, which maybe it's a bit far out, but interestingly enough, ChatGPT now has something called Planny, which is basically a plants GPT that allows you to gives you tips in terms of how do you take care of your plant and so on. And then the last one is monetary ecosystems. So the same way nature requires biodiversity to be healthy, today's monetary systems are very monoculture, right? So it's basically one currency for one nation state, and maybe even one currency for more than one nation state. And we think that we should learn from nature here and usher in a world of diversity in terms of monetary ecosystems. And there has been a lot of experiments of people trying to do that, even prior to crypto, right? So Sardax in Sardinia is one example. I'm sure there are a bunch of eco-villages who try to come up with their own community currencies. There's been some talks about purpose-driven money and even in agriculture, right? Community shared or supported agriculture and shared ownership. And so we're going to be having a lot of interesting conversations and maybe some initiatives around how do we usher in that direction and build basically regenerative economies based on this concept of monetary ecosystem diversity, really mimicking nature in a lot of ways from a biodiversity and kind of regen ag perspective. So to jump into more concrete stuff and talk a little bit about how we're thinking about starting this, moving on to the next slide, I want to start with the 2 goals that we think are starting point, and then I think Chris will talk a little bit more in detail about what this means. And so because we're kind of at the beginning of really our of our V DAO incubation phase, we think there are 2 primary goals here. One is raising awareness and educating about what regenerative living is. And 2, enabling meaningful community connections and interactions through virtual and real-life events. And before I pass it on to Chris to double-click on each one and share in more details, I also wanted to clarify a little bit the relationship between Fifth World and V DAO, because that might also not be super clear. And the idea behind V DAO, it's incubated by Fifth World. It's really this kind of community building initiative to bring community together, educate, work together, raise awareness, ultimately get to a state where we can even ideate solutions together and maybe get funding to build them. And then from a DAO perspective, we are basically privileged here to have the support of Fifthward to incubate it, but ultimately the goal is to spin it out outside of Fifthward and decentralize it over time so it's completely community owned. And we don't have all the answers in terms of like how we're going to do that. We also don't have all the answers in terms of like how we're going to push the agenda of regenerative living. But we're looking forward to like work with the community and with you guys to really shape this and figure out what the plan should be and how do we, usher in this direction in terms of decentralizing the DAO, but also in terms of like really starting this paradigm shift from where we are today to a regenerative paradigm. So passing it on to you, Chris.
Let's have a think in more detail about how we're going to achieve these goals. So our first goal is around raising awareness and educating people about regenerative living. And I would say at the heart of achieving this is going to be co-creation within the DAO. And we want the community to be at the heart of that. And our job at the moment is to kind of create this space and facilitate the formation of this community where this co-creation process can emerge. And there's a couple of examples of the kind of initiatives that we're going to focus on in this first phase. One is the V DAO census. And what we mean by this is a kind of an opportunity to map out our community, starting with the initial contributors. And to kick off this census process, we're going to look for avatars that represent the roles that the contributors are fulfilling. So one idea we have at the moment is around this topic of ecosystem builders. So we're thinking of animals within ecosystems that are ecosystem builders. The most common example of this being the beaver. So to kick off this process of developing the census, we want to start developing different avatars in various creative ways of kind of that represent these ecosystem builders. And at this stage, Bitcoin John's got already on the right track with this. We want it to be like super fun and super engaging. It's about like coming together and thinking about like what animals represent these early contributors to V DAO and how can we encapsulate that. And so that's one of our first initiatives. Kind of linked in with that is the V DAO memes, and we've already seen a few members of the community so far like sharing memes and different kind of things that they've put together which are drawing attention to the current paradigm and in a really humorous, lighthearted way, suggesting ways we might need to shift paradigms. And we want to continue that initiative within the community and really encourage people to be creative. So we're going to be focusing a lot on this within the community. Ben has already created this section within the Discord, which we're calling Creative Corner. And within there, we've got an opportunity for people to share memes, experiment. We've put a meme generator in there, which you can play around with. Also, we've added recently following a suggestion from Tyler, who's really enjoys experimenting with Midjourney and creating different kind of building designs and stuff. We've integrated the Midjourney into it. I'm laughing at some of the content that's coming out in the chat right now. This is like exactly the kind of direction we want to go with this avatars thing. I think it's captured people's imaginations, which is great. And we want to continue that experimentation. Same with Midjourney, experimenting with different ways of using AI to represent regenerative living, whether it be buildings, whether it be community spaces, anything. And that can also help with the avatar designing process with the ecosystem builders in mind. And then finally, so that's like touching on all the creative initiatives within the DAO, which is going to be a core part of how we're spending our time. The final thing on this list from the point of view of community-led content is what we're calling a regenerative living course or regen living course. We want to co-create with the community a regen living course, which is open source and available to people within the wider Web3 ecosystem. And really what we mean by this is building upon the traditions and the content of the permaculture design course and taking that as our baseline, but developing it and adding a higher tech layer and adding more kind of different elements to it that take account of all the different tools and solutions that are available now compared to when the permaculture design course was first ideated back in the 70s and 80s by Bill Mollison. So our Regen Living course is really building on that content and developing it and making it accessible to a whole new audience of people, particularly within the Web3 and the tech community. And we've got a few ideas about how to go about this. Part of it will be accessing grants from within the ecosystem to fund some of this, the development of this content. And then I think over time that's going to be a core offer of V DAO to the wider Web3 community in terms of the value we're bringing. So educating people, raising awareness about regenerative living. Moving on to think about the kind of events that we're going to have, and starting with the virtual community events. So we've got a monthly cadence of each of these events. So on week 1, we're going to have our community call. So this is week 1 in the cycle, and this is an opportunity for us to think about the focus and the aims and the goals and come together to think a bit more about the operations of the DAO and how we're going to achieve our aims within the community call, as well as sharing information and making sure that everyone within the community is up to speed with what's going on. Then on week 2, we've got a Twitter Spaces planned, and our first Twitter Spaces will start next week. And in that Spaces, Mark and Rob are going to be going through some of the content they covered in their recent South by Southwest presentation on the soul and the science of regenerative agriculture, regenerative living. And that's going to kick off our Twitter Spaces. Looking to the coming months, we see the Twitter Spaces as being a way of integrating into the wider Web3 community and also within the regenerative living community more broadly. We'll be bringing in tons of guests that we think the community will be interested in hearing more about other projects within the ecosystem and really kind of putting ourselves out there and sharing ideas with other projects that are working out on similar things in a similar area. On week 3, we've got Lunch and Learns, and this is an opportunity for us to bring experts in their field into the V community to share their knowledge and kind of explain a bit about their experience and really share knowledge essentially and offer some initial trainings in various areas. We're going to kick off with an introduction to permaculture, which will happen in 2 weeks, and there'll be more information coming out about that very soon. On the final week in this cadence, we've got an open mic, and that's an opportunity to open the floor up to the community. And I know that a number of the contributors that I've spoken to so far that want to get really involved in V DAO are interested in this. It's an opportunity for people to come, share a bit about the topics that interest them, or maybe a specific project that they've been working on where they've developed a bit of learning that they want to share with others. It will also be an opportunity for some discussion groups. If there's any topic that interests particular members of the community, we can use that open mic space to kind of facilitate discussions on those areas and share knowledge collectively around the DAO. So these are the 4 virtual events that we have planned, and they'll continue on a rotation. So one of these per month going forward. But it's not only virtual events that we want to focus on. We're really interested in real life events as well. And many of you, I think, attended the gathering that we put on at East Denver recently, which was a great success. Just bringing people together by the lake, hanging out, talking about regen living, fire, good food, few drinks. And these kind of events are a core part of what the vision that we have for V DAO going forward, and offering these community meeting places as side events to big major conferences in the Web3 calendar is a big focus for us in the coming months ahead. We're also interested in starting up some supper clubs, and I know that Ben recently has started a new channel in the Discord to get a sense of like what areas of what cities do people live around that might be most suitable for organizing supper clubs. I think Ben might share more information about that later, but I'd encourage everyone to kind of share the areas where you live, so that we can think about where's the best place to host our first supper club. We're hoping to kick that off in the next couple of months. The purpose of this, the goal, is to enable meaningful community connections, and we really want to create space for those connections to happen, and space that's enjoyable, it's relaxed, and people want to kind of be there. So that's one of the big goals of V DAO. And looking forward to the future, we see this developing into real world physical locations which are more permanent or semi-permanent. An example of this is this regenerative living hub idea that we have, and we imagine there being hubs all over the world where there are groups of people coming together around this regenerative living mission, experimenting with ideas, innovating, and ideating around these topics. So the longer term goal of V DAO is to work towards more in-person opportunities for gathering and ideation, innovation. In the short term, we will be tapping into other communities who are already have their own campuses. Certain DAOs out there already experimenting with at the intersection of the DAO space and the real world event space. We're really seeking to partner with many of these projects in the ecosystem to bring the regenerative living conversation into these spaces, and really kind of connect and educate, raise awareness in the wider Web3 and tech ecosystem. And I think the key kind of point within those events is this sense that is gonna be high tech, high touch, high nature. That's the center, or that's the kind of vibe that we want to promote within our real world events, whether it's events that we're running ourselves, or whether it's events that we're kind of engaging with other communities, offering regenerative living courses or mini retreats to their communities. So I think that's covered the main goals. Yeah, over to you, Ben.
Yeah, so just to get a recap here on the multiple opportunities within the V community and V DAO, we have, the V DAO census, which Chris talked about. You can find the setup for that. It's a kind of react for role. So you react with the corresponding emoji to where your location is or where you're closest to. You'll find that in the Start Here category under the Select Location channel. There's also the monthly virtual events planning, in particular, an opportunity to participate in the open mic community virtual event. That's something that'll be happening once a month. Also something that Chris touched on. Great opportunity for people who want to share what they're doing, particular project, something that they've built, whatever it might be. It gives them that space and provides that opportunity there. There's also the in real life events planning, such as the hosting a supper club, for instance, in your location. Again, highly recommend that everybody go to the kind of V DAO census thing there, and interact with that. Hubs and retreats planning, that's again something that Chris had touched on. That's kind of a little bit further down the road, but is a great opportunity. DAO content, whether it's long form video, simple blog posts, infographics, and more. A lot of opportunity there to develop content along with the DAO, that can then go out and be published for consumption by the public. DAO BizOps opportunities is also an area in which we're definitely going to need contributors. Then there's also the more wider opportunity of that we're looking for individuals who would be interested in exploring and co-creating the V DAO avatars. If you're interested in this particular initiative or any of the initiatives that we are covering and talking about today, please be sure to either reach out to myself, Chris, or Mark. Another one was the Regen Living course, the open source updating of the PDC kind of format. That'll be a great opportunity for those who are interested in helping in that. For those of you looking for less structured opportunities to engage and contribute with V DAO, I highly recommend that everyone really put their meme skills to the test and hop into the Creative Corner section of the Discord. There you're going to find the meme toolkit channel, with links to various methods of creating viral worthy memes. A meme show-off channel where you can share your masterpieces, kind of test them out and see what kind of reaction you get before you throw them out there into the regular world. And then there's also the Midjourney AI art channel where you can create any image your heart desires. If you want to picture a futuristic modern homestead with a killer outdoor grilling patio, Midjourney can help you with that. So those are all within the Creative Corner. And some of your creations, they may also could be showing off on the V DAO Twitter, of course, with your permission and a shout out as well. Another way everyone can help is by sharing the V DAO manifesto. This one's probably one of the more lighter lifts, but it has a great impact, really does. You can find the link to the manifesto in the Discord, under the Start Here category on the channel called Sign the Manifesto. Share it with your friends, your family, or some stranger you just met. That gives off good regen vibes. If you have not signed yet, please be sure to check it out. Give it a read. If you feel you are aligned with the mission and goals, give it a sign. For DAO application process, if you're interested in applying to become a DAO contributor, you can find the type form to fill out in our Discord server under the Start Here category. The channel, I believe, is called Apply for Membership. Once you've filled out that form, and don't worry, the form is meant to only serve as an initial opportunity to learn more about who you are. But once the form has been filled out, you will receive an invite for an alignment call, which again is fairly informal. It's just a chance for us to, not just us, but you as well, have a better opportunity of knowing one another, and seeing where we can fit in with one another and how we can help each other out. In terms of what we are looking for, it's a very early stage. We don't have like predetermined requirements on the level of, contribution. It's really just looking for well-aligned people who are interested in contributing in some fashion and at, a level that they're comfortable with. I'd really like to take this moment to give everyone a bit of a heads up as well about the Twitter that's coming up next week, Tuesday, March 26th. There will be an official announcement about this that gets released both in Twitter and Discord tomorrow, with the ability to set reminders for the event. It'll have all the finer details and everything that you need. Another event that we kind of pointed out to earlier that I want to put on everybody's radar is the Lunch and Learn that's coming up the week after the Twitter Spaces. This is going to be a great opportunity, great learning opportunity for everyone in our community. It's the first Lunch and Learn event. It will be on permaculture, and I highly recommend everyone join us. With spring, now upon us, at least here where I'm at, I'm looking at like growing my own food and expanding my garden, and I'm sure that this Lunch and Learn opportunity will provide me with a lot of information, and it'll be a whole lot of fun. Does anybody have any questions for us? I know, I think there might have been a few that popped up, but I didn't see a ton. So, I mean, you can either unmute yourself and ask away, or you can drop them in the chat and we'll be happy to answer any questions that anybody has.
Question from John Ben around are the events times up yet?
Look to the events in the Discord. There will be an official announcement tomorrow that has like all the finer details of the events. So if you're talking about like the event for like the Lunch and Learn, that's still to be determined, but it'd probably be right around the same time as this. I think most events will kind of fit around the same similar time frame as today's community call. But always look to the announcements and events for specifics. Tioru is asking, do you guys have any part-time job opportunities for community members? Thanks. Maybe Mark or Chris, did you want to take that question?
The honest answer is we don't know. But if you have some ideas, we can have a chat.
I think the first step might be to complete the contributor application form. Then we can have a conversation about that.
Well, one of the jobs that might be possible is dressing up in beaver costumes and getting more people to sign up for the DAO. We're always interested in that. We do host dinners in Yoford in our community on a fairly regular basis. And so I guess my question would be to the community, are there any Albertans here? And if not, you should come join us. And I think it'd be really neat to have like multiple dinners happening in multiple locations, and we could kind of time them and maybe zoom in and have like a little community space where we can connect with each other. But we'll be definitely posting our Yoford dinners up in the space, and anybody that's in our neck of the woods is welcome to come join us. And if it's a bit of a trek, I'm sure there's a bed in the community we can put you up in for the night. So happy to kick that off in our community.
Sounds great. Thanks, Rob. I think the plan is, as the community grows, we want to have as many supper clubs in as many locations as we can. But I love the idea of bringing in like people coming in virtually to those as well. I think we should look into that in the future for sure. I think in relation to that, John had asked when the first retreat is likely to be. I think realistically, we're looking into 2025 for the first kind of full V DAO retreat that we organize. But for the rest of this year, we're going to be looking for other opportunities to connect with other projects, and there'll be more information coming out about that. So we will be having real life events, but for a full V DAO retreat, likely to be 2025.
So I have an account with Coinbase that has an address, but it's also wrapped for ETH2. So I'm wondering if that is one I should use, or should I try to open up another one, or what's the best way forward with that in the application process? That's where I got kind of stuck.
Do you mean the question about sharing your wallet address?
Yes.
Yeah. At this stage, it's any wallet, whatever wallet address you prefer. There's no no conditions around that at all. Like, so whichever wallet address you prefer is fine.
Then I will finish setting up my account then. Thank you.
And as Kevin so adequately pointed out, beards are not a requirement of joining V DAO. We had this discussion internally on whether or not we should make it a requirement and opted that to make sure that we're being totally inclusive, beards are not going to be a requirement. So feel free to join if you're beardless. Marcelo asked, "Do you guys are aware of the Regen Cities initiative?" I'm vaguely aware of it. I forget who was heading that up.
I think it's Edgar. He's Brazilian, but he lives in Europe for like 12 years.
Okay. And do you know, like, are they planning on, like, do they have like land that they're trying to develop, or is that something that they're looking at?
Yes, they're trying to launch like local innovation hubs with like a region approach, and the plan is to launch first a forum. It's something. It's the inspiration is the TEDx thing, so like the forum gathering the people, both like Web3 and non-Web3 people, mostly like the local stakeholders of the city, and then like merging the two into a proposal for to launch the local hub. And then the local hub will do like the mapping of investments in the real estate sector, and then provide it to a couple of, I think they have like a couple of VCs behind them. I'm not sure.
That's
But I
very
think like
interesting.
it's a good fit in some of the things here. For example, in real events planning right now, they don't have anyone to do that. So maybe this can be like initial approach. Same thing for hubs and retreat plannings. And yes, I think both of them.
Yeah, I think there's like, always the opportunity to work with others in, especially along the lines of, do they have like an area where they might be able to host a retreat or something like that? There's definitely, great alignment opportunities there. Chris or Mark, maybe you could expand a little bit more on that. But yeah, I mean, feel free to put me in touch with who's behind that project. I'd love to have a conversation with them.
Nice.
Yeah, we'd love to talk to them. Like in general, anyone who's building in that space would be interesting to have a chat with, and also potentially collaborate or partner with. So we've been looking into some other examples. There's like a sustainable city in Dubai. There's some examples in Europe. There's actually some in the US. I wasn't aware of Regen City specifically, but I'm really curious to learn more.
Yeah. Also, I think they have like I said that maybe it's a good fit because they have budgets, but they don't have like people or initiative. So
Interesting.
like I think it's a good, maybe it's a good fit.
Yeah, definitely. Let's chat offline and see if we can set up a call with them.
Yeah, if there are any other questions, feel free to ask. We got about 7 minutes of time left if we need to use it. So feel free to ask away. You can come up, unmute yourself and ask, or again, ask in the chat box there.
Yeah, I have a quick question, Ben. I'm just, and I know we've discussed this before. I feel more like a fly on the wall here because I haven't been involved with DAOs for quite a while, but I was heavily involved during the NFT years, and it was brutal towards the end. Tokenomics played a large role in it because it was essentially for an NFT, it was a trading environment. And I'm just wondering, how do we do this? I mean, gamification, tokenomics, are we doing that? It was such a dangerous place to play. I love trading, but I don't know if there's a role here. So I'm just kind of curious. How does all that work with us?
Yeah, That's a really good question, and I'll probably pass it off to Mark and Chris here in a second. But I think one thing to point out is that it's something that's really early on, and that's something that, you know, as a community and as a DAO, we can start to ideate on how all this kind of works together. But yeah, Chris and Mark, if you could expand on that a bit.
Yeah, it's a great question. So part of the reason, or actually one of the reasons we're not leading with that right now in terms of the different initiatives that we shared, is because we want to focus first on building a highly aligned community. And I think the moment you introduce tokens or NFTs, not most of the times, but I think in the majority of the times, you typically attract people who might want to buy them for speculation or to make money, right? So the objectives become different. And we're trying to figure out first how to build a community, and then how to start sprinkling in some of those Web3 elements in a way that is constructive. And we have some ideas there. Like, for example, we are exploring some ideas around doing or building NFTs related to planting trees. So in a way that the people who buy those NFTs can still make profits if they want to, but then part of the profit would go for like the constructive real world use case, which is planting trees. I saw a project yesterday on Base, which is a layer 2 blockchain, where someone did something similar with peaches. So if you buy the NFT, you basically get, I think, a box of peaches delivered to your house every couple of months or something like that. So we're trying to figure out how do we use those crypto primitives and crypto systems in a way that allow us to spread our mission and incentivize people in the right way to reinforce those positive behavior. And I don't think we have a clear solution. I think it's probably a working group that we will be forming within the DAO to go through these topics and those notions and figure out how do we experiment with these things, how do we build things that are, again, regenerative, right, and are emphasizing the right goals and the right behaviors, and at the same time allowing people to get incentivized and benefit from engaging in those behaviors. So I didn't really answer your question, but I recognize that it's a challenge, and this is one part of the DAO's mission to actually get there.
Yeah, you did. That's a great answer, actually. The other thing I was wondering about is anonymity. That was the challenge back in the day. Everyone was anonymous and they could say anything they wanted and get away with it. So if we're trying to do something real, how does anonymity fit into this? I really don't know. I didn't have solutions back then, and I don't have solutions today. So, but I know it's important. I know it's really important because it gives people responsibility, not to be anonymous, but I don't know anymore. Maybe I'm too old to understand this.
No, it's a good question.
I use my name on Discord, by the way. I use my real name, and it was murder. Wasn't a good thing to do. I was attacked constantly just because I wanted to be that guy, that open and honest. But I don't know, people don't feel that way.
Yeah, and I mean, we got attacked, I guess, on this call today by some people, right? So this is kind of another issue with the crypto space. I think there are solutions today that allow you to build reputation using anonymous or pseudo-anonymous IDs. I think Marcelo was mentioning that in the chat. There are even solutions using ZK technology that allow you to keep your identity private and only reveal whatever proofs you need to reveal to interact with certain protocols or certain solutions. I think it's still kind of getting shaped, and there are some good examples today and some good use cases, but also like early in that curve of adoption and solutioning. And this is something we're also going to be exploring as part of this DAO census, right? So we're starting with these avatars to make it fun, but ultimately it's about building the social graph and the visual identity of the DAO and the individuals within the DAO, and we're going to have to get into those topics as we build this. Marcelo, you want to jump in?
Yes, just add something that in the past, anonymity was linked to lack of accountability, because like the internet and everyone can say whatever they want behind the screen, but Web3 and blockchain, and Web3 being the culture around blockchain, give us this opportunity to have like, okay, you're anonymous, but this is your ID, your online ID. You're not anonymous. You just have another ID just to deal with things, to talk about things that you don't feel free enough to talk with your own identity. And as while we can like give scores to it and reputation systems and build reputation systems, I don't think this is a problem. Like, it's more a problem when there is lack of accountability, when someone can just enter a community with an like anonymous ID and then doesn't like being accountable for anything the person do or says.
Yeah, great. I've been involved in DAOs where you could have an avatar remain anonymous, but you had to register your real name with a DAO, so they knew. I kind of liked that, and it worked. It wasn't perfect, but it did work.
I think, as Mark says, we're going to get into this sort of stuff as we develop out our census and as the DAO grows. And I think we're building this DAO at the intersection of the digital and the physical. So a big part of that is about meeting people in real life, hanging out, having conversations, and innovating in real life as well as in the digital. So I think that will be a factor in some of these conversations around this topic in the future. But thanks a lot.
And
Really
yeah,
interesting question, guys.
yeah,
Sorry, Mark.
and these are no worries. Sorry, I interrupted you, but these are great questions, Maurice, because like the reason we started this DAO is to actually answer these questions, because we know we need to usher into a world where we need to build decentralized systems, we need to build decentralized identity, we need to build decentralized incentives, but we also need to do it in an anti-fragile and positive and regenerative way. And I don't think as a society in general, we have the solutions yet for these things. And the hope is by asking these questions and then getting people who are interested in those topics involved to try to work on it and collaborating outside of that with other people working on these things, we will find some of these answers together.
All right. Did I miss any other questions by chance in the chat? I don't see. Okay. And if you guys, anybody has questions later on, always reach out to us, Mark, Chris, or myself. We're more than happy to, answer as best as we can or point you in the right direction of any information that might help you, find an answer to your question. But yeah, I think that would conclude our first community call. Just about right on time, and really thankful for everybody who participated, joined in. We're really looking forward to co-creating some amazing things and seeing people in person, and just building out this awesome, amazing community.